Hey folks, I'm your host for this week, Chris Wallace. Thank you so much for joining us for episode number 86 of CardsChat, the friendliest poker podcast in town. At least it used to be. This week I've hijacked the podcast and I'm turning the tables on our usual host, Robbie Strazynski. Robbie's been asking questions on this podcast for quite some time, and I think it's time to mix it up and get Robbie to answer some questions for us instead. So Robbie is not only the host of this podcast, he's also the owner of CardPlayer Lifestyle, a website featuring thousands of great articles and also some of mine. He started playing poker around the kitchen table at 8 years old, got serious about the game around 21, and since then he's been involved in gaming media, written for every gaming magazine I can think of, created the Poker Notes live app, hosts multiple podcasts, including this one, does amazing things for charity, and will be hosting the second annual Mixed Game Festival in Las Vegas in June at Resorts World. Hey, Robbie, welcome to your podcast.
Wow, it's so funny. I've done, like you said, 80-something out of 85 of these introductions. It's kind of weird and surreal to get an introduction, but thank you. It's good to be here on the CardsChat podcast. And I will say, before you start out, Chris, it's very cool how kind of like things come full circle in a way. You were actually the first person to ever interview me. I still have the date here. It was February 25th, 2013, on your old Under the Gun podcast. That was the first time I ever got interviewed.
Wow.
So it's pretty cool, right? Almost 10 years, 9.5 years. So it's pretty cool to come full circle like this again.
Yeah, that's probably when we were still doing that podcast for Poker X Factor, which I think went under a long time ago.
That's the one.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Then you were probably one of the first people I ever interviewed.
Oh, wow. So how far we've come. Good that we're still here with the seat at the table.
We made it. We didn't have a ton of guests on that show, so yeah, you were definitely one of the first people that I interviewed in a podcast format. So we've got all kinds of questions. We got some questions from the members from the forums. I kind of went through some of the old podcast episodes to see what kind of questions you were asking people, so you could get a little of your own medicine, and then I came up with some things as well. Let's start on a high note. When you won the 2018 GPI Charity Initiative of the Year for running well, where you run 1,000 kilometers for children's cardiac care. Yeah. I want you to talk about that. Tell me about that project.
Thank you. Yeah, that's definitely a high point of the career, because you could win awards for like professional achievement, but for something like that where you're not doing it for the sake of an award or aiming to get something, you're just trying to do something nice. So it was pretty cool to get recognized by the Global Poker Awards, by the Global Poker Index. So I had done that actually for a few years prior. The idea just sort of being, let's run and have people sort of sponsor me for, 10 cents a kilometer. We're in Israel, so, we do kilometers instead of miles. It's about 0.67 miles, something like that. And I was like, I could do this if I just sort of stick to it, 2-3 times a week and run my 10Ks. We'll get to 1,000 kilometers over the year, and let's see who comes forth, on Facebook, Twitter, whatever, family members wants to go ahead and sponsor it, and see if we could put some money together, something meaningful for charity. It started out with Kids Kicking Cancer, was the first charity that we started raising money for, and then we moved over to Save a Child's Heart. Two organizations that to this very day I still do support privately a little bit with some donations. And it was just pretty cool, like so many times you see, poker has such great potential to bring money to charitable causes. You see all these charity poker tournaments. You see, you have Dan Smith's Double Up Drive, raising, millions of dollars every year for great causes. And it was, I was like, hey, I can't do millions, but like even something small and sort of like build a little bit of momentum and have, $10 from here, $25 from there. And all of that added together in that year in 2018, we did manage to raise over $10,000. And, for Save a Child's Heart, that's significant enough to bring someone over from, usually a third world country to Israel to have life-saving heart surgery. There's a sort of a dictum in the Torah, if you can save one person's life, it's though you're saving another world. So that was a pretty cool feeling to be able to do that. And charity's always just sort of been a big part of who I am, and just sort of integrate that and have so many people who I know from the poker world and just fans of what I do support that cause. It was very, very meaningful. And like you said, to get an award for it is just pretty darn awesome, and something I could be very proud of to show my kids.
I try to bring up people's charity as much as I can. Sometimes I do things anonymously, but I've actually thought about putting together like a poker staking thing. I'm kind of, at some point in the next few years, I probably won't be a professional poker player anymore. I'm trying to do other things, and I'm kind of tired of paying the bills with poker. It's been very good to me, but I'm kind of over it. I want to put together a charity thing, and I'm going to tell people if they want to buy into this thing and have a piece of my charity action, the only requirement is that their name will be publicly known. I want people, right, because it's not about getting recognition. It's about inspiring other people to do the same thing.
Exactly.
So when we go down on Monday nights to work with Poker Gives, they do a giveaway here every Monday night. I always tell people about it. I want people to know this thing is there, and I invite people to come down. So when you win an award for it, it's not only feels good, but like it's great to inspire other people and to bring more things in. And speaking of Poker Gives, we're going to give some money to them after we do a book signing at the Mixed Games Festival. And I think is everybody doing a book signing in on that?
Yeah, so yours is going to be, you got a book coming out. We'll talk about that at some point if you'd like. On Tuesday, June 14th, that's your day. Will you be coming in, doing a signing? And basically, depending on who's signing, which day, which book, a portion, we'll see how large of each book will be donated towards Poker Gives. And, as you said, it's a wonderful organization where all proceeds, it's a completely volunteer-based organization. All proceeds do go towards the charity. Local, needs in Las Vegas are met. So I think it's a pretty cool thing. Again, just to like, hey, here's a book. You're buying it. You're getting some good information out of it. You get to meet the author, the world-famous bracelet-winning 2014 10K horse winner, Chris Wallace. And then also, portion of those proceeds go towards charity. So kind of a win-win-win all around. And just the other signers will be on Sunday. The Mixed Game Festival is June 12th through 16th at Resorts World. Other signers are going to be Dylan Lindy. He's coming Sunday. I got the list here so I don't mess it up.
Ellie's coming, right?
Pardon me?
Ellie's coming?
Yeah, he's Thursday. He'll be coming June 16th for his book. Dylan's book is Mastering Mixed Games. Ellie's is his autobiography, which I translated, Pulling the Trigger. Bernard Lee is coming on Monday, June 13th. It's his Poker Satellite Success. Yourself, what's the title of your book, Chris, actually? I don't know.
This is the first that the public is hearing about it at all. So we're going to we'll talk more about it in a few weeks.
Okay, no problem.
We're not trying to keep it a secret. I would have told you not to talk about it. We're not trying to be sneaky about it.
Right.
But we haven't announced it yet. So, I'm doing basically all the publishing for it, but I'm writing it with a couple of other world champions who are much more famous than I am. And cool. So I'll be, I haven't even finished the cover design yet. We'll be,
okay. But we can say that it has something to do, it's appropriate that it's at a Mixed Game Festival.
It's a book on horse.
Okay, we could say that. Very good.
And I won the 10K horse, and I am by far the least accomplished horse player of the three people involved in the book.
I believe it's horse rider is the correct terminology. And then you've got the final signer, Greg Fossilman Raymer. He's got Fossilman's Winning Strategies. That's Wednesday, June 15th. And it's kind of apropos in a kind of cool way because he was the winner of the Platinum Pass at the first Mixed Game Festival. So we got 5 great folks signing 5 great books. That's an additional thing to come to the festival besides just playing your favorite mixed games.
Couldn't be a nicer bunch of people. I'm a pretty nice guy, and I'm the jerk in that bunch. What a bunch of nice So I love the venue at the Resorts World, by the way. I just love that place. I'm a coffee person, and they have the best automatic coffee machine in the world, so they won me over right away. They bought a Swiss Frank A1 from Switzerland to bring over here to make really. So when you're in there, have some coffee. It's amazing. But from the tables to the dealers to the staff to the food, to everything in that room is top notch. I love that place. So I want more people to go in and see it. I love that you're having the festival there. And I've also played a bunch of mixed games there, and I know their dealers know all the games. They're running an 8160 mix with a bunch of plaques with games most people have never heard of almost every day. So their dealers are really sharp on mixed games.
Absolutely. That's something that very much attracted me to that room as a place, like hopefully in the future, when we do these mixed game festivals in Las Vegas, that could be the home of it. This is our first time around working with them. And as you said, just an incredibly well-trained, friendly, mixed game loving staff. It makes so much sense to have it there. Also, as far as I know, lowest rake in town, $4 max per pot. With that $4 taken only, when the pot goes up to $80.
I think that's Is it? I think it's 2040 8160. It's some whatever it is. I've written it down before because it is like the lowest mixed game rake in town. It's really great.
It's super great, and besides the coffees, also you can self-serve your sodas and stuff. So that's pretty cool. It's like over 30 tables in that room. When you're looking for a break, we're not looking to compete. Everyone knows it's every tournament series is going on during, of course, the World Series. Everyone is bracelet hunting, but every hotel, resort, casino has their tournaments going on. We're not trying to compete at all. Basically, we're just trying to provide an avenue for if you are doing that sort of stuff. Take a break for a couple of hours. Just go ahead, splash around for some low stakes, learn some new games. And if you don't have the bankroll to go ahead and chase bracelets, take your $100, $200 and just spend all day having a great time mixing it up. And, that's what we're sort of catering to. It's a niche that I had believed, and I still do believe, is a little bit undertapped, underserved. So it's nice to be able to provide that as an option for people of, hey, maybe I just, don't need to only railbird during the World Series. I can actually play a little bit and not bust my bankroll. Maybe I'll even win a few shekels too.
Yeah, I had a ton of fun playing that thing last year. There was a bunch of people who were really into mixed games, and then there were some people who hardly had played at all who had a great time too. It's a really relaxed environment and a nice break from, during the World Series for me. I mean, I played $80,000 worth of tournaments last year, and it was intense stuff every day. So it's really nice to have a break to go play some fun, low limit, relaxed games. I love it.
And I want to just point out, credit where due. You didn't just play. You're also a photographer. Great photos that you put together, and I appreciate that you came out and shot some beautiful ones there, of our players during the tournament, and also, during the other book signings that we had there. It's pretty cool to get those top quality images from you, Chris. So
that was fun. It's a huge challenge to take pictures in a poker room. I
think the lighting is a little bit better in Resorts World than the previous destination.
I imagine. I shoot wildlife, and I'm chasing down hard things to take pictures of all the time, and it's still much easier to do those things than it is to take pictures in a poker room where you're low light and people are moving around, and the lighting you can't control the lighting in any way because you can't use a flash, and it's really a challenging environment, but it's super fun.
Right, and also this time around, we don't have to wear masks anymore, so that'll just make for, generally better pictures than, having to figure out a way to snap a cool poker face.
Yeah, in my database of pictures, about 2/3 of my player photos are tagged with mask, and over the years there'll come a time when people are searching for, I need a photo from back in the day when people wore masks, and they'll go back. So. Tell us about the home game poker scene in Israel. I know raked poker, casino games in general are not allowed there. You have kind of two kinds of lotteries, but that's about it. And that you can get in trouble for running or playing in a home game in Israel in some cases. So tell us what that scene is like, and are there any mixed games that are played?
Correct. So, there is no scene of that I know of how would I even call it? There's no... There is an underground scene. There's certainly nothing legalized or, licensed or anything like that as far as poker rooms or casinos in Israel. There is an underground scene. Again, it's the kind of thing of poker is a game that people are going to love. And even if it's not allowed, that you can't prevent people from loving it and wanting to play it. So there are those, folks who do sort of run it, and they don't do it in a raked way. They don't take money out of pots, but they just sort of say, okay, whether it's one table or two tables, they're going to do a tournament. So let's say, okay, you go ahead and you pay, I don't know, $20, $30, something like that. And with that, you just sort of get a whole buffet meal, all you can eat. And then you can go ahead and play. So I'm sure they're making some money off of it, obviously, but that's how they sort of run those sorts of games. and other games do run even like in more public areas, but the way those sort of work is, any money that goes in as far as like entry fees for tournaments, there's no money that goes back out, but they'll offer prizes like an iPad or, a weekend at a hotel or something like that, a bike, things like those, but no money goes out. So they're trying one way or another to, get around it. But I don't really take part in that much. I very much just sort of stick to home games. There are two regular groups that I play in, my game and my dad's game I always talk about. And they've been running for equally as long, but I would say my dad's runs more regularly, pretty much, once a week, come hell or high water. I've been playing in that. Man, it's got to be approaching 20 years by now. Pretty close to that, I'd say, maybe 18 years. And it's just, friends of mine who I've come to know through poker, obviously, but, we're friends, very, very close friends away from the felt as well. And, you talk about like mixed games and stuff. I would say, just like anywhere in the world, Hold'em is obviously the primary thing that's taken hold in Israel as well. But the games that I play, I love a good mix. I run a mixed game festival, so I learned it. My breeding ground for it was learning from my dad when I was a kid, and I learned all those sorts of games. And till today, we still play and integrate some new ones that we hear about in my dad's group. And slowly but surely, you kind of realize like you got to bring new blood in. So what my game sort of started off as a Hold'em game, and slowly but surely we're like, okay, this time we're going to introduce 7-card stud. How do you play that? And we sort of bring that, and now it's a decent, at least 5 or 6 game mix that we allow in there. So that's how you sort of do it. You can't just sort of throw someone into the deep end and say, okay, we're going to play Drama Doogie, with Deuces Wild or something. We're going to go one game at a time. And yeah, like again, this I don't just podcast about poker. I don't just write about it. I don't just promote it. I also play, and I think that's a very important ingredient. I love the game, and when I do go on my trips abroad, I use those opportunities to get in as many hours as possible playing in poker rooms, and I just love the game.
Cool. We call it 2-card boring in my home game in Minnesota. You could call anything but that.
Yes.
I know it's easy to learn and it's good for TV, but really it's boring. It's a boring game to play compared to so many of the other fun games. I'm interested to hear about life in Israel. I think a lot of people, certainly in America, the only news we hear about Israel is usually trouble. Our news broadcasts. What we see are the remnants of explosions and missiles and rocks being thrown and all the strife that is sometimes there. But then I'm interested in these things. I've spent a lot of time in third world countries and your murder rate, intentional homicide rate, is a fifth of what ours are. A little bit less than a fifth of ours. You're actually much safer than we are. So. How often do those kinds of things affect your life, and how is life different in Israel than it is here?
Well, thank you. It's not often I get asked that, so I appreciate that you're asking. First, I do want to clarify. I don't think anyone would consider Israel a third world country at this point, or any sort of.
No, I was talking about intentional homicide rates and like learning about
I see. In that way.
Where places are safe and where they're not, and why, and those kinds of things. So Israel certainly is not a third world country.
Right. And also, just kind of like a little bit ironic, this podcast, at least my end of it, is coming to you from near Durant, Oklahoma. I just happen to be abroad right now, yeah. So, man, I follow the news just like anyone else, and I guess because we're closer to it by definition. So there, websites that I go to as far as like more local type of coverage than you would get from like a CNN or a BBC or Fox News or something like that. So we get more of like the local flavor and, with a little bit of Israeli, politics mixed in based on which station you're tuning into. It's funny though, but like you say, it's how often does it affect my life? Really not that often, and I think one of the nice things of the fact that I do go abroad, relatively often and get to go on all these poker rooms and people asking me, where are you from? I say, well, originally Los Angeles, but I live in Israel. And I get that, obviously because I don't sound Israeli, but, oh, you seem normal. how's that possible? I was like, well, it's a normal country. I do my laundry, I eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and take my kids to school, and do the ironing, and I throw out the garbage, all the kind of regular stuff that anyone else normally does. I would say I commute to work, but thankfully I don't have to commute anymore. That was thankfully something I left behind 5 and a bit years ago.
I was going to ask you about that. You hitchhiked to work for 13 years at 6 a.m. every day. Is that right?
That is correct.
That's amazing. Amazing.
We can get into that. I want to.
People in America will be shocked to hear that because hitchhiking is a different thing here. But I've been to a lot of countries where hitchhiking is a normal thing. That people, it's not that you're broke with all your clothes on a stick, out by the tracks trying to get somewhere. It's a very normal thing in many places, and I'm assuming Israel is the same way since you were doing it every morning.
Absolutely, and I will go back to answering that previous question, but I do have to relate a story. I had the privilege, I didn't even realize how big of a privilege it was at the time, back in 2016, to interview the late, great Mike Sexton. And I remember reading about him in his book, Life's a Gamble, about how he used to hitchhike when he was, I believe in his Army days. It wasn't the Navy. I don't remember exactly which part of the armed forces, but I think it was the Army. And I was like, hey, Mike, you and I have something in common. We both hitchhike. He looked at me like I'm falling off of Mars. Like, what? But yeah, it was the real deal. We live out in a place called Karnei Shomron. Everyone's like, so where's that? If you look at the map of Israel, it's kind of like throw a dart right in the geographic middle. That's basically where we are. With no traffic, which doesn't happen. With no traffic, it's about 35 to 40 minutes east of Tel Aviv, about an hour due north of Jerusalem, just as far as where we're located. And public transportation, just quite frankly, isn't that great. And, for a long time, we just had one car. Gasoline is very, very, very expensive. And just to put that out, we're talking like European levels expensive. We are paying regularly, not just in these inflation-riddled times, $7 to $8 a gallon. And, when I hear folks in America, rightfully saying, hey, when you're used to $2 and all of a sudden it's $4, I'm like, oh, please, I beg to pay $4 a gallon. It's very, very expensive. So we had one car for a very long time. And, when I had to go to work every single day, you have to get out of our little village to the nearest train station. And, my wife needed the car because I got 3 kids that they needed to be shepherded to their different activities around. My wonderful wife, Miriam, shout out to her, and I'll do that at least once more in this podcast. Love her deeply. But yeah, so I hitchhiked to the train station, and thankfully, it's about a 20-minute drive from where we live. Thankfully enough, people leave early in the morning. And why 6? Because you just never know when the ride's going to come. And you don't know what the driver or other passengers might smell like after a day of work, or how tight of a fit it's going to be. So there's a lot of adventures in 13 years, but I hitchhiked to the train station, and then thankfully there was a train. But yeah, those, I would say I put in my dues. And not just hitchhiking too, but also back when you're standing at the train station and hoping that someone coming off the train is going at least in your direction. You got your sign, hey, Karnei Shomron, in Hebrew, of course, and sometimes no one comes, and you're just standing there in the heat or the rain or the whatever for 20 minutes till the next train comes, and a few times even a third train have to come till finally someone picks, because no one's obligated, it's just a nice thing to do. And for that reason, I've been there on the other side, and I do try to help other people. And I would say, yes, it's certainly common, but not when you live in cities where there's better public transportation. When you live a little bit out in the sticks, it's certainly common in Israel, but there's sort of a general vibe of people who live out there of like, in Hebrew you call it Kol Yisrael Arevim Ze Lazeh, each member of the tribe, for lack of a better description, is a brother to, a sister to, and responsible for the other. So that sort of collective, I don't know, that thing, we're all in the same boat together, basically, that sort of prevails. And, when I have the opportunity to drive out, or even within the little village, I try to give people rides too.
Leave some of that attitude in America while you're here. We could use a little more of it. Yeah,
well, we just try to show the good sides of things. And like you said, if we can inspire even one more person, it's worth telling these stories. But to get back just to the other question about the whole living in Israel thing, sure, like when some big things happen, like you said, that whole, again, we're all in this together. When, God forbid a bombing or something like that happens, and you hear, one person died, 6 people died, or murdered, that sort of a thing, you may not know them, but I think a little bit more in Israel than perhaps in other countries. It's like, oh, well, this is my brother, this is my sister, this is my cousin, even though we don't know each other, but there's that whole ideology of, this is the Jewish homeland, we're all Jewish, and, there's 20% of an Arab population, I'm saying, and sometimes, unfortunately, they're victims too, but especially when it is, someone who, this is the idealistic, we're all meant to be here from all corners of the globe, and this is where we gather, and, people are just sort of murdered because they're Jewish. It's just like, that could have been me, and you definitely feel that pain, and you just soldier on that wasn't an unintentional pun, but you just sort of you got to continue doing that laundry and taking your kids to school because you believe you belong there. And, that's why I moved there 23 years ago, and very, very proud to call Israel my home and to try and represent to the best of my ability, of what it means to just be a good person living in Israel, and that it's a good, normal place with lots of great things and wonderful places to visit, and, and good things going on, good things come out of that country, and try to highlight the positives of it. I hope that answered your question.
It does, and I think that's a good answer. And it's always a tragedy when that stuff happens. If it's any consolation, know that you moved. When you feel like the news is constantly telling you that these bad things are happening around you in your country, just remember that you're 5 times less likely to die of violence in Israel than you are in America. We're killing each other at a higher rate than the Vietnam War killed us at its peak. And then, your intentional homicide rate is about 1 per 100,000. Ours is about 5. El Salvador leads the world at 53 or something. Life could certainly be worse for both of us. There's some pretty awful places. But, anytime that there is anything, the news, that's what the news is going to cover. That's what gets clicks. And
exactly.
That's why we have this impression in America about how war-torn Israel is because that's the stuff that, When I was in Greece years ago, we met this couple, and they agreed to take us out on a tour of Athens one night. And they took us around. We went to some bars and some restaurants and drove around Athens. And I was asking them questions about Athens. And they asked us, is it like on TV in America? Is everyone shooting all the time? I said, no, it's not. Not like that. I know that's what you see on TV. It's not like that in most places.
Right.
I did live in Detroit for a while in the early 90s, and it was like that. But in most places, it's not. And then when I asked them, don't you have bad neighborhoods here? And they said no. And they said there's nowhere in Athens that you couldn't walk safely at 3 a.m. There's not in the whole city. It's 6 million people. You're fine. And we tested it. We walked around and we walked around all night, and there really wasn't. And that really changed my perspective about how I see things around here. And
I do. You kind of open the door there. You kind of open the door just to point out, when people come to Israel, there's the typical, highlights tour that you visit. You visit the Holocaust Museum at Yad Vashem and the Western Wall, and the Baha'i Gardens in Haifa, and of course Tel Aviv. As much as possible, anyone out there who does have the opportunity to go and visit Israel, try to mix, interact with the locals. I think you'll get, first of all, get on the plane in the first place. Now that the country's doors are wide open, you can come and visit finally after a couple of years. But try to, first of all, there's 100,000, believe it or not, 100,000 American citizens like myself who moved to Israel over the years. So you'll, bound to bump into them, especially in the bigger cities. Plenty of, native speaking English tour guides who you can go ahead and, learn about the country from. But, when you get that on the ground first person perspective, when you're just walking around universally, I hear from people who have had the chance to visit, it's not what you see in the news. So it's kind of, nice to have whatever platforms I personally have to kind of show not that other side, but that there's so much more to it than just what you see in the news.
And that's good advice everywhere. I've spent almost 2 years outside the borders of America, and everywhere I go, the thing to do is go hit a couple of high spots if you want to go see those tourist destinations. But that just feels like Disney World in most places in the world. It's not real. It's not the place that you're going to visit. So get out and go with the hang out with the people. I mean, my one day in Venezuela, one night actually, I just went to a bar in the middle of the city and walked in and started drinking and talking to people and had this wonderful night where I just hung out with locals. And that's the only experience I have in that country. That's really the way to see a country and understand it is to go away from the tourist spots and meet some locals. And it's a really wonderful way to do it. So we have a dedicated thread on CardsChat where we take questions for upcoming podcasts. I think you know about this.
Yes, I'm aware.
It's pages and pages. I think it's 18 pages long or something now. And it's a great feature. I actually didn't know about it. You probably had questions for me when you interviewed me that came from it.
Yeah.
And I didn't know about it either. This week I found out about it, went and checked it, and looked at a bunch of the questions for you. But I'm going to remember this for the future. I wish I would have known it for the Kevin Gerhardt because he's a great mixed game player. I would have peppered him with questions.
I will just point out for those who didn't tune in or didn't hear it yet, Chris was on episode number 56. I got to get that in there. Got to get the
30 episodes.
And yes,
wow.
Yeah, but I do have a little list. I keep it of who was on and when. And Kevin Gerhardt was 84 just recently, a couple episodes ago.
So Chica Bonita wants to know if you're going to play the main event this year, and I'm kind of curious if you've ever played it or if that's a plan of yours.
I have never played the main event. I have no plans to play the main event this year. It's certainly not a plan. I wouldn't call it a goal. I think it would be pretty cool, but there's sort of an asterisk as far as the main event itself. So first of all, it's not a mixed game. It's just no limit hold'em. So that's not a reason why I wouldn't play. I certainly wouldn't, and certainly wouldn't be able to commit $10,000 of my own money. But if staked, it'd be cool. But the asterisk actually is, I don't think I could ever play it because of the Jewish Sabbath. And I don't play poker on the Sabbath. I don't deal with money or anything of that nature. And, you don't enter an event unless you hope to win it. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to be, I'm destined to be the next world champion of poker, holding the bracelet after 7-8 days of play. But should one run deep, it would necessitate playing into the Sabbath on Friday night at some point or on Saturday, and you wouldn't just sort of leave your stack. That did happen once in the past. A Seventh-day Adventist name, I believe, Jared something like that. Jared
Interesting.
Jeff. He actually just left on a Friday, left his stack, and it was blinded off and cashed in. I don't know, within the top 100 places or something like that.
Wow.
But I'm like, no, yeah, it did happen. It was kind of nuts. But I'm like. That's basically the reasons. I'll play all these straight days of poker if I happen to be having the run of a lifetime. But Shabbat comes, sorry, not going to do it. So if I ever do play bracelet events, I always, the couple that I have played, I made sure that whether it's a 2-3 day, whatever it is event, it will not go into Friday night or Saturday play.
That is an interesting. I didn't expect that part of the answer. I hadn't thought about it. I used to live next door to a Chabad house in Michigan, and they would. I knew a couple of the older guys there, and they would come get me to do things for them if they couldn't. Once the sun goes down on Friday night. Is that right?
Exactly. From sundown until stars out on Saturday night. Yeah.
Yeah, and so if a light needed to be turned on downstairs and somebody forgot or something needed, I'd give them a ride places once or twice, things like that, where they couldn't do things. They were very serious about not doing anything work related.
And they wouldn't say, could you please turn on the lights? Or they would say, oh, it's very dark in here or something like that. And then so they don't. They just don't.
How are you doing, Chris? Oh, good. Yes, I'm not doing as well because the whole basement is dark and we were going to go down there. Oh, okay.
And aren't you hot? It would be so great if it was less hot. Right? Without turning it. Give me the Jewish law and I will find you the Jewish loophole for it. But yes, there are ways. We figure it out.
All right, so probably not the main event for you. It's unlikely that would work out. So maybe the 10K horse one of these days.
That would be phenomenal. That would be really, really cool.
Chica Bonita also wants to know what your favorite guest has been on a podcast and if a particular interview really stuck with you.
That's not a fair question because I couldn't just point out one. I certainly couldn't point out a favorite. I mean, episode 56 with Chris Wallace was just incredible.
I heard that one was amazing.
Right.
Inspiration.
If anything stuck out, well, one that actually comes to mind as particularly sticking out was I want to get the number right here. Also, was Courtney Kennedy. She was on here, episode number 69. And the reason that came out is she actually heard the interview that we did with, I believe it was Danielle Anderson, episode 67. Just a
I
couple
know Danielle,
before.
she's great.
Right. And that was also a phenomenal episode. But Courtney, she heard about this interview, listened to it, really liked it, and she reached out to me saying, hey, if you ever need a guest, and, find my story interesting, maybe you'd like to have me on. And that hasn't happened since. And I'm thinking to myself, who's Courtney Kennedy? That rings a bell. And I saw, she had won the ladies' event one year. I was like, yeah, let's research this story. So that was memorable in that way of how the episode sort of came to be. And we ended up interviewing her. And it was just really cool and eye-opening to have a story there that I ordinarily wouldn't have thought, could be told via this platform. So that one certainly, stuck out as memorable in that way.
And she wants to know about the future of CardPlayer lifestyle as well. And I'm kind of curious about that too. What are your long-term plans for that? Going to take over the world?
I am all in. It is my website. I've owned it since founded it in 2009, so we're 12 years and still going. I'm very all in. There's no sort of like exit strategy of build it up to a certain number of users or revenue or anything, and then flip it. Nothing like that. It's because I love it. I love having a platform and having built a platform and continuing to build a platform where I can kind of do my own thing in poker media and stuff that I'd like to believe is kind of niche that no other, excellent poker media sites are doing. Everyone kind of has their own sort of path. I found mine. I found what works. And, I used to do all the writing, and now I'm doing about maybe a quarter of it because we got some wonderful freelance writers, doing a phenomenal job, and I get to showcase their work on my platform, which is really, really nice. Just the plan is to keep growing. When I first started it, it was never a thought, I'll be self-employed and, that'll be my main thing. But it's kind of become that and organically turned into that, over time, just sort of building little by little, discovering who the audience was and, all of the different changes that are, kind of well documented in interviews that I've given and that it's gotten to this point. And I just sort of say, like, just keep doing what you're doing and good things will happen. And thankfully, it is happening, and I'm starting seeing, sometimes doors close. I try to diversify the stuff that I do, and, one door closes and invariably another one opens with another opportunity to grow the site, and continue going and providing media coverage at different events, expand the roster of freelancers, and, as more revenues come in, it allows me to be able to spend more and invest in the business and grow it. So the plan is just to keep going in the same direction it has been going. And, maybe someday, if I can't, it's fine. I can't see myself retiring because I love doing it. I can't see myself ever falling out of love with poker. If I ever feel the need that I really need to slow down, then, unless one of my kids wants to take it on, which I doubt. Shout out to Abby, my 14-year-old, who's doing a lot of graphics now, phenomenal graphic design. But unless that happens, it would have to be placed in the proper hands because it is my baby, and I would need to entrust it to someone who would continue to shepherd the brand, many, many years from now when I'm done with it, if I ever get done with it, in the way that I cultivated it. And, a fan base is loyal, but they're loyal for a reason. So whoever would take it over at any point in time, I would want them to sort of follow in those footsteps.
All right. It's doing what you love for a living is so great. I have a friend who's an author, and he's very happy to be an author, and he doesn't want to be anything but an author, and he loves it. And when we met, he was very interested in being a poker player, and I was interested in being a writer. And so we have traded poker lessons for writing lessons a lot over the years. I think I've benefited a lot more than he has because I'm now making money writing, and he's not making much playing poker. But every time he calls me, he says, "What do you do for a living?" And I say, "I'm a professional poker player." And he says, "I'm a writer." And it's this kind of exchange. Isn't it great that we can do what we want to do for do what we love for a living? And especially like the first 10 years of playing poker for a living for me were just really, every day I woke up excited that I could do what I wanted to do for a living, Acid Burn FX wants to know, if you were reincarnated as an animal, what animal would it be? He's known on this in this thread for interesting questions.
That's freaking carnage. Part of, like my gut, like my first gut instinct is like, well, it would have to be a kosher animal. That's like
You don't want to be eaten.
Right, exactly. I don't know. That's a good.
So if you were in Israel, it might be safer to be a non-kosher animal.
Right, exactly. Goodness me. I ought to think of an answer for this one. I'm not like a pet person, so I'm not much of an animal person. I don't know. Is there another one that has to turn up? God, that's a tough one. I'm not an animal person.
You don't want any of his other questions from this week.
Oh, goodness. So let me try to think of one. Give me a time bank chip. Hold on one second.
Robbie has used his first time chip.
Yes.
Time bank activated 1 minute.
Okay, I'll go with dolphin, because dolphins, I believe, are known to be among the most intelligent of the animal species. So I'll go with that.
They seem great, really actually. Cool. They help out people sometimes. They seem quite nice.
There you go.
It's a good one. Chris Stalls wants to know who is the one guest that you would most like to have on the Cards Chat podcast but haven't been able to get.
Probably Phil Ivey. But I the haven't been able to get is a little misleading. I haven't tried, but I wouldn't even know how to try.
It's tough.
I mean, like
I
know
tough.
people who know Phil type of thing, but so maybe. But and what's very nice, I have actually technically produced an interview with Phil Ivey before on CardPlayer Lifestyle. It was a written interview through when he was doing Ivy League and Ivy Poker, so he had some staffers and representative who sort of liaised and took my questions, asked him, and then brought it back to me. So that was a genuine Phil Ivey interview. But and I'm kind of pleased to see that he has done some more media on occasion, but never like a full-length, hour-long interview. I don't think he did like a 4-parter with Barry Greenstein once upon a time, and that was pretty cool because it's to hear Phil open up and he's just puts on his pants the same way we all do. I got my picture taken with him once. I'm first and foremost a fan. That would be super cool if I ever did get that opportunity, because I would understand precisely how rare it is and just really do my best to prepare. And one of the things I do with all of the interviews I have here on CardsChat or any other platform is try and ensure that the guest who's kind enough to give an hour or an hour plus of their time enjoys themselves. So if they're already giving that hour, the least I can do is ensure that they don't regret having given that hour. So that would be a really cool one, and I would like to also put a second one there. I don't believe it will ever happen, but it would be pretty darn cool to interview Isai Scheinberg as well. There's only been one public interview by the great Lance Bradley that ever got released.
A couple of years ago, and I remember that. What a big deal it was, because it was the only one ever. Yeah,
right. And I believe he had been chasing it for like 12 years. So like no joke, like it's not an exaggeration. So it was written, but maybe throw a little Hebrew in there, with Isha. Maybe that'll give me a little bit of an in. But those are the two white whales, so to speak.
Yeah, those are tough ones to get. Phil just doesn't care about those things.
Right.
He's not an intensely private person or avoids the media. He's just not interested in them.
Right.
Phil just kind of does the things he's interested in, and he doesn't care about anything else. He's a very kind of very driven to just do a few things kind of person. I worked at Ivy League for a while myself, and
okay, right, there you go. I would say also, like, you want to go ahead and make it worth their while. I mean, I don't know what an hour of Phil's time is worth, but it would be a real challenge to, say, okay, this is worth an hour of your time, Phil. But that's what I would try to do. So, no,
I don't. I don't think you could pay him to do things he doesn't want to do ever. I don't think any amount of money would get him to do something he doesn't want to do. He's that kind of guy.
Nice spot to be in. Yeah.
I'm kind of that guy too. I've kind of set my life up to the point where I just don't have to do things I don't want to do, and
there you go.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great. What is your favorite of the mixed games? If you're just stuck playing one game all night, what game would you pick?
Is this Chris Stalls as well?
Nope, this one's from me.
Oh, okay. What is my favorite mixed game? God, I have a lot of favorites. My gut tells me Stud or Stud 8. Basically, they're basically the same to me. But the reason being specifically because it requires that you pay close attention at all times to all of the face cards, to all of the cards, and you really can't sleep, on it. You have to really just be like, what did they have and what did they have, and I think that's just important. Like a part of what I love about a mixed games is that there's a lot of always social banter and that always tends to happen, and it just keeps you on your toes. And Hold'em, when you've done it so many times, I don't want to call it boring, but it could be to a lot of people. But boring. You could really work on autopilot so much. You can't. I mean, Stud, you can work on autopilot as far as knowing when to bet and when the appropriate places are to make your moves, but you really do need to pay a lot of attention. And I think I like that a lot about the game. And if there was one, if I had to play the same game all night, it would be like a Stud or a Stud 8.
All right. I love Stud 8 myself, like Super Stud 8 and like the Stud 8 variants like Razdugi and things like that. Those are great games. I love those games.
Yeah.
And what mixed game do you really not enjoy?
It rhymes with Raz. It sounds like Raz. There are those who would say Raz. I think Raz. I don't like Raz. Not a fan of Raz. If I'll play it, and sometimes I kind of perpetuate this myth to build it up, and maybe I can, but invariably, it's like the poker gods know. Oh, Raz was called. Let's make sure Robbie gets ace 2 3 4 king king king. Like it's just like invariably because Raz is poker's version of golf. It's a great game to try and play and do your best. But it's inherently frustrating because sometimes there's just only so much you can do, and the cards are going to be what they are. And
it's the game where there's the most complaining, for sure.
Right, and I wouldn't say I complain during the game, and I wouldn't let, if my emotions show during that game, it wouldn't be, oh, I run so bad or anything like that, but it's just the frustration of it all. So, Badoogie. Raz is my least favorite among the mix. I love Badoogie, by the way.
Yeah, I get it about Raz, just because I like Raz, but when I play mixed games, I see Raz come in and I go, because I know there's going to be two old guys complaining the whole time about how they're getting stud high hands and how bad they run in Raz. I just know the complaining is going to be worse than in any other game, so it's clearly a game that frustrates a lot of people.
If Hold'em is the Cadillac of poker, I believe that Raz is the Yugo of poker.
That's a great callback reference. Those were made like in the mid-'80s or something.
The Ford Edsel of poker.
There you go. Pinto. Pinto would be a good American reference. What does your next year look like? Just work on CardPlayer and occasionally come to America and play mixed games? Anything else?
That's a fantastic question. I'm a big planner. I really like being prepared for things. I try to go into all the podcasts prepared, obviously, and I try to have a good idea of, what my publication schedule is for the next week, next month. It's hard to plan for the year. I imagine the question was meant, in a professional sense, but, yeah, I'm grateful that the world has gotten back to normal to a large degree, that, what was missing from my life. And I'm a big extrovert. I love being able to travel, having the opportunities to travel. And I love home, but, 95% of my time is home in Israel, in my house, working, that sort of a thing. And that 5%, that's the spice, that's the salt, to make things a little bit tastier. And, it's fun. It's fun to have those things to look forward to, not just in America, but also in Europe. Things are really opening up. I got to go to Malta recently for the Malta Poker Festival. And, seeing all that stuff reopen, knowing that, I'll have the ability to hopefully go and visit these festivals. It's funny because, poker players sometimes, after doing something for a long time, you get a little bit jaded. Oh, they've been there, done that. For me, because I don't have it, oddly enough, in Israel, I don't have any casinos or poker rooms. It's by definition a rare thing. So by definition, I de facto appreciate it more. So, yeah, I would love to keep on doing these sorts of things, getting to fly. For me, Israel's a tiny country. It's almost every flight is basically international. So that's a fun thing. I do hope to continue doing so. Now I'm in Durant, Oklahoma, covering WPT Choctaw as we record this, but this will get released, and the next flight will be out to Vegas the beginning of June. Prior to the Mixed Game Festival. Beyond that, I don't have any other poker trips planned for the rest of the year, but I do hope that there'll be at least one more. And what does it look like? I would love, it's happened maybe on a couple of occasions. I would love if during poker trips, either maybe some folks from my own home game, be it my dad or a couple of my friends, will be able to join somehow at one of the stops, or alternatively, my wife Miriam, shout out to her, I told you I'd do it again, gets to join me, or maybe my kids. And that's always means more of a balance, because how do you, be a dad and professional working at the same time? But I somehow try to manage it. I hope that's what it'll look like. That'll be pretty cool. Again, I tend to give long-winded answers, but I do hope it looks good things. And just, again, as far as the site, just continuing to sort of build it beyond, just the media coverage of the events in person. Just, more content is better.
How much time are you going to spend here during the World Series?
Not as much as I'd like. I still have that dream of I'm going to do the entire summer, the whole 7 weeks. I love Las Vegas. If I wasn't living in Israel, I know for sure that's where I would have ended up. I love the city. It's just a fun place. Yeah, it's fun. Oh, yeah, you're there.
I should have moved here 25 years ago. I just love it.
Oh, yeah. It's a good. I feel very alive there, and I feel that there's I kind of live a poker player's daily hours. I wake up later than the average person, go to sleep later than the average person, and it's just sort of a city that gets me. I feel there's a lot of people like me in that way. Within the poker standpoint. Nice Jewish community over in Summerlin as well. I believe I could kind of fit in if that's where I were meant to live. But I'm forgetting. Las Vegas. I'll be there. I arrive on the night of June 6th, and I depart on June 17th. I'm going to LA then for just the Shabbat for the weekend, and then back home to Israel. I got my festival, and just a few days before that to also just sort of be at the World Series, and just kind of hang out and see people, maybe get into a couple cash games. We'll see what happens. But the reason I can't do longer is just, it's that balance. I've got, family life to lead. I've got, I can't just leave my home for 7 weeks and, abandon my wife and kids.
Yeah.
It's important for me to be home with them and, be a very present parent, a part of their lives, and husband as well. Also, I've got family coming in to visit me, now that the doors have opened again to Israel, so a lot of relatives are coming into Israel. Not that that's not why they're coming, but they're coming to, visit Israel, my dad, and, I'm part of that. So it'll be nice to see them there. And then we've got a family vacation coming up in July as well that I'm hoping to take. So just, like everything in life, trying to find the right balance between personal and professional. And I'm grateful that that window of about 10 days or so, is open, that I get to be in Las Vegas too.
I was hoping to recruit you to a charity poker tournament, but they're before and after you're here.
Alas.
Bad timing. Maybe next year.
They should have 2 World Series each year. It's nice that, October, then June, it's like they don't have to wait a full year, but we're going to have a lot of FOMO after.
It was really nice just having it in October when the weather was so beautiful.
True. But hotel rates are so much higher. So
that's true. Yeah, I guess if I had to deal with that, I would not have been enjoying it so much. But
there you go.
I live here. In fact, we just rented out rooms to our friends and had people stay with us and stuff because hotels got so crazy sometimes.
Yeah.
I think we may see some of that again this year since it's on the Strip, and I expect huge numbers. I think this might be the biggest World Series ever if they can get enough people registered. The lines might chase people away, because if you've got a 4-hour wait in line, or it's a 20-minute walk to the Venetian, people are going to walk to the Venetian. But I think that the people showing up in town will be the largest number of people that have ever come in for the World Series. I think it's going to be really big.
If I were a betting man, which I am, I would bet that, because, in the 50-plus year history of the World Series of Poker, sure, you had it in downtown, and, downtown is, a hub of activity. But the Rio is, apart. It's a destination on its own. You have to go there. This is the first time in World Series history where you quite literally have passersby foot traffic. And that is like an X factor in a way, but you can't help but think, the same people who are like, oh, what's that big wheel? I'll put, $20 on that. Oh, let's try a cash game. Let's try a tournament. And I think, we'll see, but I have very, very high hopes that will be a way of getting new people into poker. Plus, again, there's that whole everyone is just hungry to play, especially Europe. Right at the tail end of the main event last year, Europeans were allowed to fly in, and that added a little bit of boost to the main event. But now everyone from Europe, and you don't have to wait, 2 weeks out in Mexico or Canada to come in. So I think we'll see a much more worldly presence at the World Series of Poker this year, and I certainly hope the numbers are going to be big, and it's kind of cool that they have a bigger venue, a 2-hotel combo venue there. I'm eager to see it and to be a part of it.
Yeah, who knows what the growing pains will be like this year? Could be some trouble, and it's always rough the first week or two until they get things running smoothly. But the venue, the spot looks great. I mean, they have a tremendous amount of space between Paris and Bally's, a lot of space. Parking might be strange, but they claim they have a ton of parking, so it could go reasonably well. I know that crossing the Strip as a local, I've lived here for 6 years. I know that crossing the Strip anytime when it's busy sucks, and everybody who lives here knows. You take Desert Inn and go onto the Strip, or you go around. You don't drive across the Strip at 5 o'clock on Friday. And,
right.
And Bally's is on the other side of the Strip from me, so I have to take a little different route to make sure I don't have to deal with that. But it's pretty easy to do. I'll just take the, I will actually take Desert Inn under the highway and go to the back of Bally's. But that parking problem and the traffic problem on the Strip during some of those times is going to be a lot. And there's just nothing they can do about it. The Strip is only so big.
Right. And look, I'm obviously not a local, but I've been in Vegas quite a bit. And from like an experienced tourist point of view, I think one underutilized thing that could be more utilized than I would recommend to people is the monorail. It happens to be on the correct side, and there is a stop at Bally's. So sure, there's still some walking involved, and you need to park at a different property or something like that. But could be nice to have the monorail. It'll save you Ubers or whatever it is, and parking, and and the crowdedness of Bally's Paris. But that is sort of like a nice sort of fail-safe option. Runs pretty much most hours of the day as well. So
and it's usually not full. It's usually underutilized in general.
Right, and look, the fact is, because it has a stop at Bally's Paris, it works for this specific instance. So maybe we'll see that becoming an avenue of traffic. And
there's always the Deuce, the giant double-decker bus that goes up and down the Strip. You can stay just about anywhere downtown or wherever, and the Deuce runs I think it's every 10 minutes or 15 minutes during most of the daytime hours. So getting an Uber or a Lyft has been tough in Vegas for the last year or so. They're coming slowly, and sometimes not coming at all. I was at Aria trying to get one on a Friday night, and they told me 40 minutes, and then they told me 50 minutes, and then they told me, we don't know. So I just gave up on the whole idea.
Oh, my goodness.
Hopefully that problem is better now, but it was a big problem during the tail end of the pandemic. We just couldn't get Uber or Lyft anywhere. In my neighborhood, it's usually 5 minutes at the most, but on the Strip, it's longer.
Yeah.
Is rideshare a thing in Israel?
Well, we don't have Uber or Lyft. We kind of have, Waze. You've heard of Waze. That's Israeli technology developed that. So there's kind of this new little feature built in where you could put that, hey, I'm waiting for a ride somewhere, and then Waze will credit you. I never used this. I don't really know, but that's kind of a thing. There's Get Taxi, which is not, it's certainly not a ride share kind of thing. We have our own version of sort of like the, what's the American version of it? Not the FCC, the Transportation Board, whatever that is.
The Transportation Administration.
Right, exactly. So we have a sort of a version of that in Israel that is not really letting ride share in, so no.
Okay. I would have saved you a lot of hitchhiking time back in those days, huh?
Yes. Yes, it would. I wouldn't have story to tell.
I hitchhiked from Detroit to Guatemala when I was 17.
Wow.
I did. So
That
hitchhiking was never
was
to go to work for me. It was like to go.
right.
Yeah.
It was a means to a destination.
Yeah. But I've been to places. When I was in Greece, it was very common in some of the villages up in the Zagoria where you put your hand out like you do this thing, and that lets people know that you're trying to go a direction. That's like a common thing in Europe. And we did that a bunch in Greece to get like, we need to go into town to get something or whatever. And it was just amazing how often people picked you up and how often you saw other people doing it. It wasn't like hitchhiking is here where people just picture drifters from town to town.
Right. It's all culture based, basically. So, yeah.
What? And then my last question, because I wanted to make sure I stumped you on at least one. If you ran the CardsChat podcast, what question would you ask Robbie Strazynski?
Wow. Well done. Well done. I like that one. What question would I ask myself? I mean, it would. First, I'd ask myself, well, why am I asking that question? Like in general, I think this kind of like. So again, sorry for the long-winded answer, but
I think we've just reached an existential crisis where you're asking yourself why you're asking yourself a question.
Right, you're getting all Inception on me, right? But I don't know. I don't know if okay, maybe this will lead me towards an actual answer, but to sort of work through it in my head. When I ask a question, there's usually a reason behind it. Like when I do my research on podcast guests, I try to, and I do have some help from my buddy Mike and my buddy Heather, who sometimes assists me with the preparation of the shows. I try to make the interviews as unique and different as possible from other interviews that may have been done in the past, because sure, at some point a person's story is known, but there could be a cool question where an answer was given in a different interview and you can go a little bit deeper, right? So I've been interviewed a few times and I said, you were the first one to do it. So if I were to ask myself a question, I'd try to sort of go deeper, if I was more interested in me, go deeper on an answer that I may have given in the past about a particular topic. Okay, and I would actually specifically say a little bit more about, modern orthodoxy and Judaism, because I enjoy speaking about that a lot and trying to the best of my ability to explain that to people who don't, have that sort of familiarity. And I feel that, people who have taken an interest enough to sort of hear me talk about that are genuinely intrigued and feel like they're learning something interesting when I do explain what it's all about, and finding that balance between, religious Jewish observance and having one foot in that world, but at the same time being modern and, having one foot in that world and finding that sort of golden path. I like talking about that. So without directly answering your question, it would probably be something about that would enable me to explain more about it.
So
damn good
I guess if I'm going that direction and I take your advice, then tell us about how poker is viewed by the Orthodox Judaic community, and if you've ever had people disapprove of what you do.
Sure. I mean, you have there's the old joke, 2 Jews, 3 opinions, so like this, everyone's got an opinion about it, and some of them aren't as favorable. The prevailing sentiment, even within modern orthodoxy is, gambling is not something that one ought to do for a living. And most people, not forget Jews, most people in the world are unaware that this little niche of poker media exists. It's not a large amount of people who do the sorts of things that I do. So just first of all, explaining that I'm not gambling or playing poker for a living. I'm just like a journalist of sorts or a content creator in this field. That's already just sort of stage one. Then they're like, oh, okay. So once I do that, it kind of like any sort of negative stereotype or whatever kind of washes away, because I'm not, earning my living through, on the turn of a card, so to speak. Beyond that, I think just, when I am able to explain it, they find it interesting. And what I do genuinely try to do, someone once told me, I've got, these card player lifestyle patches, if you're watching the show, and I hand them out, and I try hard to brand, the site well and to represent the brand. Someone once told me, Robbie, when you're walking around in a poker room, you could have as many of these on as you want. This, and he points to the top of my head, that's all the branding you're ever going to need. And that's my skull cap. And I'm very acutely aware that when I wear that out in public and I do what I do, I'm a representative of, again, de facto, of modern orthodoxy, of Jerusalem, of Judaism. And it kind of behooves me to present the best face of that I know how. And I do feel genuinely, it's very deeply kind of a calling, a spiritual calling, of like, it's a very unique spot, because you wouldn't imagine that someone who is, does what I do on the religious front would have the profession I have. But I do very much believe that you can put the best foot forward and say, hey, even someone with the, restrictions or the lifestyle of someone who is a modern Orthodox Jew can still do hopefully good work on the media front, and it's not necessarily restricted, but it just shows, hey, this game accepts all types, from all different areas of the spectrum, and I do very sincerely try to do that hard and say that when someone meets me and say, oh, what do you do? And like, oh, you're modern Orthodox, then the next Jewish person that they'll meet, hopefully that by definition they'll have, rather than any sort of stereotypes, just a sort of a good, favorable impression that, hey, y'all are doing some good stuff in this world. That's what that.
I think you do a great job of it. I've had many good friends over the years that were Jewish. It's a culture of people I find easy to get along with. My co-writer and one of my best friends on my first book is Jewish, and so maybe I have a little different impression than some people that aren't Jewish, just because I've had so many Jewish friends. But I'm an atheist and super liberal, and you and I disagree about a lot of things in the world. But I have a lot of respect for you and what you do and the person that you put out there. And I try to do the same thing, and I think it's important to represent your group well.
Yes.
If you want to break stereotypes and break down hatred and barriers, that's a really important thing to do. So I try to always be a good guy, but if I'm out wearing a super liberal T-shirt, then I'm helping people get stuff off the shelves. I'm helping the ladies across the street as much as I can. I'm extra, trying to be extra nice and make sure that, because that could be, it happened to me the other day that a woman in a motorized wheelchair was in the grocery store, and I was wearing some obnoxiously liberal T-shirt. And she was looking at this thing, and I said, can I get that down for you? And she said, oh, yeah. And I got it for her, and then she looked at my shirt, and I could see this confused look on her face, and I thought, I might have done some good there. That might be an 80-year-old woman who watches nothing but Fox News and thinks that anybody who wears a shirt like this is an Antifa member coming to blow up her apartment, and now she might think of things differently. And I think, if we can do that, we can, that's a big way to help in the world, and I think you do a great job of that, of showing people that even most of my Jewish friends are not practicing Jewish; they're hereditary Jewish, but that even people who are very practicing Orthodox people can still be fun, kind, charitable, all these things but you're a good guy and you're doing your best to make sure that people. That you represent who you are very well. So I think you do a good job of it.
I'm genuinely very touched. Thank you, Chris, for saying that. And that resonates very, very deeply. Thank you. And I do also want to sort of add to that. I love that we're kind of peas in a pod in that way. I genuinely believe, I'm grateful that in my life I get along with everybody, no matter what it is that we do disagree on, because just it's a matter of, live and let live. You do your thing, I'll do my thing, and we can disagree respectfully, but embrace that on which we do agree and that in which we do have in common, like poker, like enjoying speaking to each other and having a great conversation. Focus on that a little bit more, and maybe in that way we could bring a little bit more light to the world and inspire others to do the same.
Yeah. Learning about the backfire effect years ago really changed how I approach things. It is a psychological effect, for those of you who might not know about it. That if you challenge someone on their views, they are more likely to dig in and be more determined to believe that thing, even if it isn't true. And so showing people direct proof that they're wrong about something that's very important to them doesn't do you any good.
Right.
But showing them that you believe something different and that you're smart and that you're a good person causes people to change their mind more than telling them they're wrong and showing them why. And so I foster relationships with conservatives, with people that I don't agree with on a lot of things, but that are still good people, because I learn things, they learn things, and we learn that we're not so different.
Sure.
When they do studies on how we feel about each other, especially in America with conservative and liberal politics, where we have this amazing polarized split right now, we're so wrong about what we think the other side thinks, and they're so wrong about us. And if we just more people understood that, how big that gap is in understanding, when they poll people and they go, they ask liberals, what percentage of conservatives think that Muslims are a danger to America, and the liberals say, oh, I bet like 60% of conservatives think that. And then when they poll conservatives about it, and it's like 10%, and we go,
right.
oh, we're very wrong about them. And then the same thing happens in the other direction, where we're just wrong about each other with these incredibly wide gaps. And if we spend more time talking to each other, we don't have that problem, and the polarization gets so much better. Do you follow Zach Elwood on Twitter?
Yes, I do.
He's working on a book on polarization. His Twitter and Facebook are fascinating. All the work he's done on that.
He's of the tells, right? The poker tells.
Verbal
right.
poker tells.
Verbal poker tells.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I'm out of questions. And how long do you usually do this thing? Do you have a plan? Like when you do you have a plan? Like when you start a podcast, do you want it to be an hour? You want it to be 90 minutes? Or do you just gotta go?
I aim for an hour. What I usually tell everybody, before the show is like, do you have an hour between 2 and 3 or whatever it may be? Preparing them for anywhere between 60 to 75 minutes. And that's the funny thing is, like, you never really know, even if you've spoken with them, you kind of know their cadence, and they're going to be slower to answer, or a little bit more methodical, or maybe they'll just be like super quick and get through. We can ask more community questions that way, because tons of them come in. I try to aim for between the 60 to 75 minute one, and also just at the end of the day, you got to be respectful of their time. If they've got more time and they're willing to, then and I think it's interesting and engaging, and the audience isn't going to just sort of tune out. So, and I've got more to ask, so I'll keep going. It's interesting because you ran out of questions right when I ran out of answers. So it just
that's amazing, kismet for sure.
Right? It's amazing. Like the New York Times, they know exactly how many words are going to fit into it every single day, and it just fits right on the page. Unreal.
I assume they have to chop out words once they. I never thought about that.
I do a lot of dad jokes. I just can't help myself. So.
All right. Well, thanks so much for doing this. This is fun. Turning the tables a little bit, and I'm sure people are happy to be learning a little bit more about you, especially those who've watched 86 episodes of this thing.
Yeah.
And as I was going back through the episodes, there's not really a CardsChat theme song. I noticed a podcast theme song, and I happen to have a dozen guitars in my office and a home recording studio, and have written theme songs for podcasts before. So, something to think about.
Nice. Okay. Duly noted. Well, Chris, I want to just say also, thank you very much. Again, first of all, just very cool to come full circle and speak with you like this when you were the first one to do it over 9 years ago. And know that we have that long history together. It's pretty cool that you've done writing also for CardPlayer Lifestyle. Now you're doing it for CardsChat. I couldn't have thought of someone better to be on that other side of the mic and have me on. So thank you. And like you said, I do hope that everyone out there enjoyed learning a little bit more about me. And maybe we'll do this again at some point in the future.
Yeah, this was fun. For CardsChat, I'm Chris Wallace. You can find me at FoxPokerFox on Twitter, and you can read my articles on CardsChat.com. If you want to know more about Robbie Strazynski, you can always find it at CardPlayer Lifestyle, or just listen to any of the other podcasts. Thanks, Robbie. Have a great day.
You too, buddy. Thank you.